He laughed. Not a joke, not an accident. The kind of laugh that makes you stop walking because you know, somehow, it's about you. I had just stepped into the resort lobby when I heard it behind me. Short, confident. Like he didn't care who noticed. I froze. The wheel of my suitcase clicked against the marble floor, way louder than it should have been. For a second, I wished I could disappear into the sound. The receptionist didn't look up. She kept typing. That made it worse. If she had looked confused, I could have blamed a mistake, but she didn't. She already knew what she was going to say. I don't think you're checking in here. She looked at me then, slowly, from my shoes to my face. No curiosity, no doubt. She pointed to a side hallway and said, "You'll want the other building. That's where guests like you usually go." Guests like you. The laugh came again, softer this time, almost shared. I felt my face heat up. My chest tightened. That awful mix of embarrassment and anger. The kind that makes you wonder if standing there is courage, or just humiliating. I glanced around the lobby. No one reacted. No one stepped in. A couple pretended to scroll on their phones. Someone sighed, annoyed that I was holding things up. The man who laughed didn't even look at me anymore. He didn't have to. I handed over my ID anyway. The receptionist took it, glanced at the screen, then back at me. Her smile shifted, just slightly. "Huh," she said, loud enough for people nearby to hear. "That's strange. I don't see your reservation." That was a lie. I knew it was a lie because I had the email. Because my name was supposed to be on the list. What she didn't know, what no one in that lobby knew yet, was that I wasn't there by accident. And honestly, standing there, being looked at like I didn't belong, I almost believed them. Almost. Because if I walked away in that moment, they'd be right. And the man who laughed, he had no idea that in a few minutes this whole room would go quiet, and his laugh would be the first thing everyone forgot. I stayed where I was. That alone felt like I'd broken some unspoken rule. The receptionist stared at her screen longer than necessary, scrolling slowly, like she was hoping the answer would change if she waited. She wasn't checking anything. She was controlling the moment. "Are you sure this is the right resort?" she asked. Her voice was calm, almost polite, the kind of tone that makes you question yourself. "Yes," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. She nodded slightly, already expecting that answer. "This property is usually reserved for private guests," she said. "Sometimes people get confused." Confused. Behind me, the air shifted. Someone took a small step back. Another person let out a quiet breath, like something was taking longer than it should. No one said a word, but everyone noticed. I was the delay. The receptionist pushed my ID back across the counter with 2 fingers, slow and careful, like touching it for too long would bother her. "If you want," she said, lowering her voice, "I can call someone to help you find the other building." Help you leave. My heart was racing now. I pressed my palms lightly against the counter so no one would see them shake. Part of me wanted to explain, to pull out my phone, to prove something. But explaining never works in places like this. The moment you start defending yourself, they've already decided. "I'll wait," I said. Her eyes flicked up, just for a second. And in that second, I saw it. Irritation. Not confusion, not concern. Waiting wasn't part of the plan. Staying meant being visible. And visibility made people uncomfortable. She turned back to the screen and started typing again, faster this time. The keys sounded louder in the quiet lobby, like she was trying to push the moment forward. That's when I felt it, that unmistakable feeling of being watched. Not glanced at, not pitied. Watched. I didn't turn around. I already knew whoever it was wasn't embarrassed for me. They were paying attention. And something told me that mattered more than I realized. There's something you should understand about that resort. People don't just end up there. It's not the kind of place you book because you found a good deal online. You don't stumble into it. You don't try it once. If you're there, it's because someone decided you should be. I knew that, which is why standing at that counter, being treated like a mistake, felt so deliberate. The resort wasn't famous. Not publicly. There were no ads. No influencers posting pool photos. People who talked about it did so quietly, usually after checking who was listening. It wasn't luxury for show. It was luxury for control. Meetings happened there that didn't appear on calendars. Conversations that weren't written down. Decisions that reshaped things without ever making the news. That's why my stomach was in knots. Because I wasn't there for a vacation. I was there because a decision was supposed to be made. And somehow, everyone around me seemed to sense that. Except the woman at the desk. She kept typing. Stopping. Typing again. Dragging the moment out like she was waiting for me to crack. Around the lobby, people watched without staring. The way people do when they don't want to be involved. But also don't want to miss anything. I could almost hear their thoughts. Why is she still standing there? Why doesn't she just leave? I asked myself the same thing. For a brief second, I imagined walking out, getting back into the car, pretending this never happened, protecting my pride. But then I thought about why I'd come in the first place, about the call I'd gotten 2 weeks earlier, about the name on the screen when my phone rang, about the pause before the voice on the other end spoke. That memory grounded me. I hadn't misunderstood anything, and if I walked away now, I wouldn't just be leaving the lobby. I'd be giving someone else permission to decide who I was. So I stayed, and that's when I noticed something else. The receptionist wasn't just uncomfortable anymore. She was nervous. Her shoulders were tight, her movements sharper. She glanced, just once, past me, toward the center of the lobby, then quickly back to the screen. Like she'd suddenly realized she wasn't alone. Whatever this place was really used for, whatever decision was supposed to be made that day, there wasn't supposed to be hesitation. Everything here worked because people followed the script, and by standing there, refusing to move, I had just forced them off it. I felt it before I saw him. That sudden awareness you get when the room changes, not loudly, not obviously, but enough for your body to react before your mind catches up. My shoulders stiffened, my breathing slowed. Someone important was watching. I didn't turn around right away. I kept my eyes on the counter, pretending nothing had changed, pretending I was still just dealing with a receptionist and a screen. But the receptionist felt it too. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, 1 second too long. She straightened her posture, then softened it again, like she couldn't decide who she was supposed to be anymore. That hesitation told me everything. I glanced to the side. He wasn't close. He didn't need to be. He stood just outside the main flow of the lobby, far enough to seem uninvolved, close enough to see everything. No phone, no conversation pulling at him. Just watching, not me exactly. The moment, the delay, the discomfort, the quiet way the room had decided I was a problem. Anyone else would have stepped in by now. Said something, smoothed it over. He didn't. And that's when my stomach dropped. He wasn't waiting for this to be fixed. He was letting it happen. I felt exposed in a new way. Not embarrassed. Assessed. Like this wasn't about whether I belonged here, but about how I handled being told I didn't. The receptionist glanced at him again. Longer this time, then back at the screen. Her confidence wavered. Around us, the lobby shifted. Conversations lowered. People leaned closer together. A laugh cut off too suddenly. No one knew why things felt different. They just knew they were. I stayed exactly where I was. Not because I felt brave. I was scared, but if I walked away right then, I'd be the one saying they were right. And I couldn't live with that. For the first time since I walked in, the balance started to change. Not in my favor. Not yet. But the room wasn't sure anymore. And uncertainty in a place like this was dangerous. I knew him. Not the way people usually mean when they say that. Not from articles. Not from rumors. Not from names whispered at parties. I knew him because, 2 years earlier, he had been sitting across from me in a place where no one cared who he was yet. No marble floors, no assistants hovering, no quiet intimidation. Just a long table, bad coffee, and a problem no one had managed to solve. I was there as a consultant. Temporary, replaceable. At least that's how it felt walking in. He barely spoke at first. He let everyone else fill the silence. Watched who talked too much. Who avoided eye contact. Who tried to sound confident. Then I said something, almost casually. He lifted his hand. "Say that again," he said. I did, and the room went quiet. Not awkward quiet, focused quiet. That's when I knew I'd crossed some invisible line. After that day, things changed. I didn't get formal emails. I got short calls. Direct, private, always brief. Take a look at this. I need your judgment. Be honest with me. We didn't talk about titles or reputation. We talked about consequences. That's how I knew when something mattered. So when my phone lit up 2 weeks earlier and I saw his name, my stomach tightened before I even answered. There's a meeting, he said. No greeting, no explanation. I need you there. A pause. Same discretion as always. Then he told me where. That resort. You'll be on the list, he added. Get there early. The line went dead. Standing at the counter now, being treated like I'd wandered into the wrong place, it finally made sense why he hadn't explained anything. This wasn't about checking in. This was about pressure. About watching how people behaved when they thought no one powerful was paying attention. The receptionist's tone, the man's laugh, the way the room silently agreed I didn't belong. None of it was accidental. I hadn't been invited because I was important. I was there to see who revealed themselves when they thought I was nobody. And suddenly, the question wasn't why he was watching from a distance. It was who else in that room was starting to realize, a little too late, that this moment wasn't going the way they expected. It started with a sound. Not loud, not dramatic. Just sharp enough to make people look up without knowing why. I felt it before I saw anything. That instinctive awareness you get when something important is happening and you're already too close to ignore it. The receptionist froze. Her hands stopped moving. Her eyes darted toward the entrance, then back to the screen, like she was hoping whatever it was would disappear if she didn't acknowledge it. It didn't. The doors opened. Slowly, and just like that, people changed. Conversations cut off mid-sentence. A couple near the couches stopped pretending to scroll on their phones. Someone straightened their jacket. Another person cleared their throat and immediately regretted it. No one said a word, but everyone was paying attention now. A car had arrived. I didn't see it yet, but I knew it wasn't just any car. You can tell when something like that happens. Staff move differently. People shift their focus without meaning to. Attention narrows. I stayed exactly where I was. If I turned around too fast, it would look like I'd been waiting for this. If I didn't turn at all, it would look like I didn't understand what was happening, so I didn't move. The seconds stretched. Long enough for the man who laughed earlier to stop smiling. Long enough for the receptionist to take a slow breath and subtly adjust her posture, like she was suddenly very aware of herself. Then I heard footsteps. Not rushed, not hesitant. Steady. Each step pulled people's attention closer, like an invisible line tightening around the moment. I still didn't turn, because suddenly the question wasn't who had arrived. It was why they had arrived now, and why, out of everyone standing there, they were walking straight toward me. They stopped a few steps in front of me, not close enough to be personal, not far enough to pretend it wasn't happening, and that's when the silence changed. No one spoke. Not the receptionist, not the man who had laughed, not the people standing close enough to hear everything. It wasn't an awkward pause. It was heavier than that. The kind of silence where everyone knows something irreversible is about to happen, and no one wants to be the one who triggers it. I could feel people holding their breath. The receptionist finally looked up from the screen. Too fast, like she'd been startled awake. Her face didn't show panic yet, but it did show doubt. And doubt in a place like this is dangerous. Her lips parted. Then she stopped herself. She glanced past me, toward the person standing there, then back down at the counter, like she was silently asking for instructions that weren't coming. The room waited. The man who had laughed earlier avoided my direction completely now. His eyes drifted anywhere but here. The confidence he'd had minutes before didn't disappear dramatically. It leaked out, quietly. That was the strangest part. No confrontation, no apology, no attempt to explain himself. Just withdrawal. Around us, people started creating space without acknowledging it. Someone took a step back. Another shifted closer to a column. Phones appeared in hands that hadn't needed them seconds earlier. No one wanted to be too close to whatever this was becoming. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He took a single step forward, just one, and somehow everyone nearby leaned in without realizing they were doing it. Then he said my name, clear, calm, certain, not like he was asking, like he was confirming something he already knew. My stomach dropped. For half a second, nothing happened. And then everything did. The receptionist froze. Not professionally this time. Her face went blank, like her brain was scrambling to catch up with a reality she hadn't planned for. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. That silence spread fast. People straightened, shoulders pulled back, eyes shifted. The kind of small movements people make when they suddenly realize they might be standing on the wrong side of something. The man who had laughed earlier stopped moving completely. He didn't turn around, didn't look at me, didn't laugh again, because now that laugh meant something, and whatever it had meant before, it wasn't harmless anymore. I didn't realize. The receptionist started, her voice thinner than before. He didn't look at her. I know, he said. 2 words. That was all. But they landed heavier than any explanation. Because it meant he'd seen everything. The pause, the tone, the way she'd tried to make me disappear without saying it out loud. He turned back to me. There was no comfort in his expression, no apology, no rescue. Just recognition, the kind that says, I saw how you handled it. Around us, people were recalculating in real time. You could feel it. The quiet shift of power, of assumptions being rearranged. Who mattered, who didn't, and who had misjudged the room completely. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel victorious. I felt exposed. Because when your name is spoken like that, in a place where names carry weight, it doesn't just change the moment. It changes how everyone remembers what happened before it. And I knew standing there that whatever came next wouldn't erase the humiliation. It would decide who would carry it. Right before everything changed, I remember thinking something. If you've ever been in a room where you felt smaller than everyone else, where you knew people had already decided who you were, then you already understand this part. Because what happened next is why I'm telling this story at all. No one stepped in. That's what stayed with me. Not to defend me. Not to explain what had happened. Not even to soften it. The receptionist moved back slightly, like she'd suddenly remembered where she stood in all of this. Her hands left the keyboard, slow and deliberate, as if touching it now would be a mistake. She didn't look at me anymore. The man who had laughed earlier kept his eyes down. Not in shame, in strategy. He was already deciding how to disappear from this moment without being attached to it. Around us, people adjusted. Not dramatically, not obviously. Phones appeared. Conversations restarted in careful pieces. Someone turned their body just enough to face away. Another person took a few steps toward the exit, then stopped, pretending they hadn't meant to. No one wanted to be visible anymore. That told me everything. He spoke again. Quiet, measured. Who told you she didn't belong here? No edge, no accusation. Just a question that wasn't really a question. The receptionist swallowed. I thought... He raised one finger. She stopped instantly. That was the moment everyone understood. This wasn't about fixing a misunderstanding. It was about marking it. I stood there, feeling the air change again. Not rush toward me, but pull away from the people who had been so certain earlier. That's what power does when it moves without noise. It doesn't crown anyone. It isolates. I took a slow breath. The humiliation I'd walked in with hadn't vanished. It had shifted, and everyone there knew exactly who was carrying it now. He didn't say anything right away, and for some reason, that silence hit me harder than the whole scene before it. He turned slightly and spoke quietly to a staff member. No drama, no explanation, just a calm instruction. Give us a moment. That was all it took. The receptionist nodded too fast and stepped back. People nearby suddenly remembered somewhere else they needed to be. In seconds, the space around us opened up, like everyone understood this wasn't for them anymore. Then it was just us. He looked at me the same way he always had. Not impressed, not sympathetic, just focused. Like he was confirming something he'd already suspected. You handled that exactly the way I hoped you would, he said. I felt my throat tighten. Not because I needed approval, because I finally understood why I'd been put through that. He didn't rush the explanation. He never does. That meeting today, he said, wasn't about numbers or contracts. He paused like he wanted me to sit with it. It was about watching people under pressure. He explained that when people think no one important is paying attention, they stop performing. They stop being careful. They show you who they really are. They weren't judging you, he said quietly. They were revealing themselves to me. That's why my name had been on the list. That's why I was told to arrive early. That's why no one stepped in. This wasn't about authority. It was about character. We walked past the desk together after that. No announcement. No awkward stares. Just a quiet shift everyone felt, but no one named. The man who laughed earlier was gone. The receptionist didn't look up. Later I heard she wouldn't be working there much longer, but honestly, that wasn't what stayed with me. What stayed with me was realizing I hadn't won anything. I hadn't been rescued. I hadn't proven myself. I hadn't embarrassed anyone on purpose. I had just stayed. I didn't apologize for existing there. I didn't explain myself to people who had already decided. I didn't shrink to make the moment easier for them, and that changed everything. I left the resort that evening the same way I'd arrived, quietly. But I wasn't the same person walking back out, because now I knew something I hadn't known before. Sometimes the most important moments don't look powerful at all. They look uncomfortable. They look slow. They look like standing still when everything tells you to leave. And sometimes that's exactly what someone is watching for. If this story made you feel something, if you've ever been in a room where you knew you were being judged before you spoke, you're not alone. There are more stories like this, moments people don't talk about, but never forget. Stay here. Watch the next one.